Hello, I'm Colleen Ferrari. I am the founder of Small Business USA, and I have the pleasure of working with so many amazing business owners. And I really want to introduce Dr. Bruce to you today of FeldMed. Welcome, Dr. Bruce.
Hello, hello. Nice to see you.
Thank you for letting me sucker you into this. But I was, I want to just kind of tell everybody how I know you. One of the coolest things, I have a husband who has lots of medical challenges and they don't always fit inside the box. And I have had parents who have had some real challenges where I've had to step up and advocate for their health. And if it wasn't for people that I know in my family that are in the medical practice and folks like Dr. Bruce, I don't know how they would have gotten the quality of care that they have. So Dr. Bruce is someone who I really respect as somebody who looks outside of common practice and really looks at the patients and what they need. So I am so honored to have you here. I can't even tell you. So I want to start because I know a lot of your patients are our business owners who, you know what, COVID has hit, life has hit, they're balancing a lot of things and stress is what they show up for. And kind of maybe walk us through, like, if a patient or somebody showed up with stress as their biggest symptom, what does that say to you?
Well, so I might start out a little bit differently, just because people don't really, I don't think they fully understand kind of how things are manifesting in their bodies or why stress is an issue and that sort of thing. So, anthropologically, man came to the earth and used to live an existence of stress, but it was intermittent, super high level, life or death, fight or flight kind of stress. The key, and even today, the key is the time in between the stresses. So, for example, I talk about people can't, I don't believe in the concept of overtraining. To me, it's the concept of under recovery. And I have all sorts of different ways of manifesting that in different testing mechanisms and the like. But one of the main things that we look to is you're being chased by the lion. Typically, in the past, you would be chased by the lion. Either you were eaten or you would escape. And when you'd escape, the lion would get bored. He'd go on to do different things, and you'd go hide in a cave somewhere, and you would chill until you recovered, and then you'd go back out and do your thing again. Today, we don't have that luxury.
So true. So true.
So we're not recovering. And people who are entrepreneurs, professionals, people who have, striving in their lives, they suck it up and they just keep going, and it gets hard, you work harder. It gets harder, you work harder still.
Right.
When do you recover? Oh, I take a vacation. Yeah, no.
Well, I have to say, many people don't really take a vacation.
Yeah, exactly. Well, yeah. And the reality is that, a week here or there is not really going to cut it.
Right.
So let's talk about the physiology of what happens. So when you're under stress, fight or flight, you're trying to run away from the lion. What do? You divert blood flow to the areas of immediate need. Those are the large muscle groups, typically hips, legs, arms, shoulders, because you got to fight or you got to, flee, whatever. Which means, and then you need to get your brain working in that immediacy mode, right? You're not doing advanced calculus.
Right.
So your brain shifts blood away from the higher executive functions, which you might actually need in business occasionally, and to the deeper sort of reptilian, fight or flight stuff. So your decision making suffers, number one. Number two, it's not likely that you're going to, pardon me, stop on the side of the road for a quickie because, you're being chased by the lion. So blood is diverted away from the sex organs. So sexual function may have a decrease. Blood flow, you're also not stopping on the side of the road at Burger King to pick up a burger, McDonald's, whatever. You're not having food when you're being chased by the lion. Now, you may do that today because you think that's appropriate, but I can tell you the blood is being diverted away from your intestines. So you're not absorbing nutrients like you normally would.
Oh, that's interesting. Well, it is kind of, I am forever stuck now with the idea of my doctor talking about quickies on the side of the road. However, but you make a really great point.
The idea is to make a point, right?
Well, done. Check.
So now when you aggregate all this stuff, you have problems, okay? So now let's back up a little bit. What kind of problems we're talking about? So cortisol is the long-acting adrenaline, essentially, and it does all of these things. So one of the other things that it does is it drives an inflammatory action. Now, inflammation is how your body sends signals to go do stuff, okay? Now, there's a level of high inflammation, right? But exercise causes inflammation. And if you do, exercise appropriately and then you recover, those are all good things. So hormesis is the act of which you are challenged and then you grow as a consequence. That's what inflammation is supposed to do, right? It is part of the healing process. However, again, you're driving chronic inflammation because you keep doing this. That inflammatory activity may show up, well, it shows up broadly, but let's just start with the gut. Okay, so people may have heard of the concept of leaky gut, right? Well, what is leaky gut? Your cells are supposed to be tied really tightly together, and the stuff that's inside your intestines only gets through your cells at the places it's supposed to, right? So that your body is absorbing stuff through channels where things are already digested. Inflammation causes a leaky scenario, so stuff gets in between and it leaks into the body, not in the ways you want, okay? So inflammatory activity occurs not only at the surface of the cell, but now stuff that's inside your gut ends up inside your body that doesn't belong, and your body gets inflamed as a consequence of that.
Fascinating.
Now go back to the fact that you've got this problem with absorption, right? So the blood flow is not going there either. So you've got an inflamed gut, you've got a leaky gut. Now you're also trying, because you're trying to absorb stuff as rapidly as possible because you're always on the go. So now you actually end up with what could potentially be a relative nutritional deficit because your body is not taking the time or doesn't have the wherewithal to grab all the stuff it wants because it needs to do it really fast, right? So now you've got this relative nutritional deficit, while your body holds on to everything it can in the case that it might find what it needs. Now you have extra nutrients being absorbed in an imbalance. And now what happens, that may actually drive a tendency toward obesity because you're holding on to stuff in the possible case you might actually need it, okay? Now, it gets worse because now you've got this tendency toward obesity, but by the way, the elevated cortisol leads to an elevated blood sugar because you got to have energy available. The body then responds by increasing insulin. Insulin is also drives sugar into the cells. And as long as those cells are using the sugar, there is no issue. But remember, you're sitting at your desk, not running away from the lion. So all the blood that goes to your muscles is not utilizing all of that energy you just produced. So what does it do? It stores it as fat. Where does it store it? Typically in the abdomen. You actually lose muscle and girth in your arms and legs because you're not using them, and you gain it in your gut. So you've got these guys who are fat in the middle and skinny on the edges. Okay, so that's fairly typical. Now it gets worse. The abdominal fat, or fat in general, as it gets to be larger, acts as its own inflammatory organ. So now you're driving more inflammation. And inflammation is really at the core of every disease state that one can think of.
Boom.
Yeah.
Like my head is exploding right now because, and this is why I love you. I mean, really, this is one. I love that you're an internist who kind of is looking at all of this. You know, I go to my internist, I'm like, oh, I have this, you know, my stomach is bothering me, and he gives me, you know, gives me a pill to fix it, you know, and I am not that kind of person. I just don't like to take medicine. But as you're telling the story, I'm thinking, okay, I'm getting this Pepsid to take care of acid in my stomach, but it seems like there's all of these pieces. I'm fighting weight, I'm fighting this, but it seems like as you're describing this, I'm actually relating to myself. I don't think I'm putting all the pieces to creating a healthy human being together because I have no lion to keep me fit.
Absolutely. So, you know, let's talk about pharmaceuticals for a second. Pharmaceuticals are by design selective toxins. Okay, they are designed to attack a specific point in a chemical pathway. Our assumption is that we have identified the keystone in that pathway, that if we remove it, right, as a problem, everything is good. There's a problem there.
Right.
Nature is by nature redundant. Okay, it has found many different ways to use the same thing. Okay, so just because you think you figured out this one path doesn't mean that it doesn't have impacts upstream, downstream, sideways. So when a Medicare patient starts on a drug, you can pretty well guarantee that come back in 2-3 years, they'll be on 3 or 4. Because you block this thing, and now we're going to block that thing because it built up over here. Now we got to block this other thing. Or you could try to figure out where the problem starts,
right,
and then let the body fix it. My tagline is limitless healing, because you can always find something else to do. But the reality is, my job is to identify the blocks where we, culturally, societally, whatever, have created impasses within our own biochemical sphere that ends up, you know, basically screwing things up.
So, you know, I'm so impressed. This whole conversation makes me kind of want to run to Long Island right now. So a patient comes in and they have stress, and from what I'm taking away from this, you're actually really getting to know this patient. You're really taking the time to figure out, like, I'm a Six Sigma girl. What you just described is, let's get right to the root cause. This is very Six Sigma. It's a very strategic approach to proactive healthcare versus reactive. And maybe every reaction, there's a root cause that we need to start way before the actual symptoms hit us of an illness.
Let me give you another little tidbit.
Yeah.
You know, so I struggle with my medical record documentation, right? I have a really advanced electronic medical record that allows me to template everything under the sun. Well, that would suggest that everybody falls into the same categories. I pretty much start from scratch with everybody. Now, that may not be the most efficient. In fact, I know it's not the most efficient way to do things, but I start with the paper, and then, I end up I start on the computer, and this is really my problem, is I start on the computer and I start plucking away, and then I end up, having the conversation, and it becomes much more important for me to have the conversation than to be sitting there documenting it all. So I end up after the conversation, I've got this gestalt of what's going on, and maybe I missed some details here and there, but the overall picture is really the important thing. So that's really what it comes down to. It's the overall picture, and trying to, one of my core values is what I call elegant solutions. The idea of finding that one thing that ultimately defines the problem. And if you can do that, then, everything else will fall into place. And the body is the most remarkable creation in, as far as the known universe is concerned. And, we don't respect its natural abilities enough. So if we can leverage those, and just sort of put things back. I mean, essentially what I'm doing is attempting to fix what we've screwed up. It's not fixing the body. The body will fix itself if you can get the stuff out of the way. I mean, acupuncture is a great example. You have blocked flow. Your chi is blocked along meridians. You unblock that and stuff gets better.
So, I mean, you've already identified in this conversation so many different therapies that you bring into the being. It's not just traditional medicine. It's you take every perspective and bring it to healing and solving the challenges that your patient has.
Well, I like to talk about it as like bringing modern technology together with ancient wisdom.
Oh,
not my
beautiful.
wisdom. Not my wisdom, just ancient.
Well, not every. I think that's what is so impressive about you, and I'll share that. To anybody who's listening, Dr. Bruce has helped my husband, and we are in New Jersey. Dr. Bruce is in Long Island. We had a conversation about my husband's health, that he opened insight and doors, and it was so incredibly helpful from afar. So tell me a little bit. I don't know the answer to this. Can you take patients that are anywhere in the United States, or kind of what is the scope of who you can help and where you can help from?
So during the pandemic, it was really easy. They extended telemedicine rules to the point where you could pretty much do regular doctor stuff on Zoom.
Right.
Now there's some legal requirements, and it gets trickier if we're going to have to do pharmaceutical management from afar. It becomes more specific with drugs, but with supplements and all of that, I have to caveat my conversation in that it's more of a consultation. It's not fully medicine. I'm not practicing medicine in a state where I'm not licensed, that sort of thing. But functionally, from the patient perspective, it's the same thing. Physical exams are confirmatory, not diagnostic, 99.99% of the time. So if you do a good history and you get the conversation at a depth, then you can answer all the questions because the patient already knows what's going on, right? You just have to frame it properly.
So you can practice.
So I have people in Massachusetts and Florida, Colorado, Wisconsin, Minnesota, California. Yes, we have people in a lot of places, Texas.
And so your full medical practice where you can prescribe medicine is New York State.
There are other states that will allow for the telemedicine prescribing of pharmaceuticals, but I tell people to, quite honestly, maintain a primary care relationship locally, because you know, I mean, stuff happens and you're going to need to go somewhere to do, you know, you fall down and break your ankle, you're going to have a doctor somewhere. So, you know, that stuff is important. And you know, I can work with regular docs. I mean, one of the places where I reside too is in that space between like the chiropractor and the internist, because the chiropractor doesn't want to talk to the internist doesn't want to talk to the chiropractor.
Yeah.
You know, the reality is two things are going on and they may be conflicting. So I can work with the folks who want to get off of medication. I can work with folks who want to modulate their medication and try to find other alternative opportunities. There's a lot of stuff.
Well, I am going to recommend, I know that I only have you for a finite amount of time here. So I am going to recommend that anybody who's listening, if you're having a challenge with somebody you love and and the journey that they're going on with their medical health, or if you are really kind of like challenged with your own self-health and stress, I can't thank you enough for what you've done for my family. Your conversations you've had have been amazing. I know many of the people that work with you, and it's just, you have made an impact in our community, Dr. Bruce. And I am really thankful for you taking this time to talk about it today. So can you tell everybody how to reach out to you? We have your email address, drbruce@feldmed.com. It's Dr. Bruce Feldman. Is there any other contact information that they need?
I mean, they can, the website's www.feldmed, Feldmed, over my shoulder, over here, the shoulder, feldmed.com. You go there, there's a contact page, there's a phone number. You know, I'm happy to talk. You know, you call, you're either going to get my voicemail or me. So.
Well, you're amazing. And I thank you so much, Dr. Bruce. Thank you for
Appreciate
taking this time today. Been
It was
awesome.
fun. Good opportunity. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.